Something strange has been happening with money. You can earn $100 a year and still feel like you're constantly standing near the edge of financial stress. Many people with strong incomes live with the same quiet question. Every time they open their bank account, they think, "Where did all my money go?" They work hard. Their income isn't small. Yet one unexpected bill can suddenly make everything feel fragile. Meanwhile, there are people earning almost half as much, who sleep much better at night. They have savings. They invest regularly. And they're not constantly racing their expenses. So the real question is this: what is actually happening here? Why do some people earn a lot of money and still feel broke? Imagine two apartments in the same city, same neighborhood, almost identical rent. The first apartment belongs to someone earning around $100 a year. Walk inside and everything looks perfectly fine. A decent car parked downstairs. A large TV mounted on the wall. A comfortable sofa. A kitchen filled with modern appliances. Takeout a few nights a week. New items appearing in the house from time to time. From the outside, this looks like a life moving forward. But there's one detail no one else sees. Every time this person opens their banking app, a familiar feeling appears. A small knot of financial tension. By the end of most months, the account balance drifts back to the same place. Almost zero. An unexpected medical bill. A car repair. A necessary trip. One large expense is enough to make everything feel fragile. Now look at the second apartment. The person living here earns around $55 to $65 a year. Significantly less. The apartment is simpler. Fewer possessions. Fewer upgrades. Nothing flashy. But there is one important difference. This person checks their bank account with calm confidence. They have months of emergency savings. They invest a portion of every paycheck. Bills don't feel like a race they're about to lose. Two apartments. Two different incomes. Yet the person earning almost twice as much feels far more financially suffocated. This story isn't really about salary. It's about something deeper that most people never stop to examine. Many people believe that once their income reaches $100 a year, life should finally start to feel easier. It's almost a psychological milestone. A number society often associates with stability. A point where money is supposed to stop being a daily source of stress. Where you can finally relax a little. But the reality is far more complicated. Many people earning around this level still live with a familiar feeling. A feeling of fragility. They earn more money than they used to. But they don't feel safer. They work harder. But they don't feel closer to financial freedom. Some feel unable to leave jobs that drain them. Because deep down they know that if their income stopped for even a few months, things could become difficult very quickly. This leads to a simple but unsettling question. If $100 a year still doesn't create a sense of financial security, then what number will? But that question is pointing in the wrong direction. Because the real problem isn't that people don't earn enough. The real problem is how their lives are structured around that income. As income increases, lifestyles quietly expand alongside it. A slightly larger home. A slightly nicer car. A few more conveniences. None of these decisions seem unreasonable on their own. But over time they build a financial system that requires constant maintenance. And as that system grows, the feeling of security doesn't grow with it. Sometimes it actually shrinks. In other words, the problem isn't how much money you earn. It's how much money your life requires just to keep running. There is a simple concept that can completely change the way you think about money. Once you understand it, many of your past purchases suddenly start to make sense. The concept is this: everything you own costs money twice. The first cost is obvious. It's the purchase price. The number on the receipt. The amount you pay at the store. Or the money that disappears from your bank account when you click, buy now. This is the cost everyone sees. But it's only half the story. The second cost is the one most people never calculate. It includes everything that happens after the item enters your life. First, there is space. Every object you own takes up physical space in your home. And that space is not free. In many cities, housing costs translate to roughly $30 to $50 per square foot per year. Imagine buying a treadmill for your home. That treadmill might occupy about 20 square feet once you include the surrounding clearance space. Which means you could effectively be paying hundreds of dollars every year just to store a piece of equipment you rarely use. The second cost also includes maintenance. A boat is not just a boat. It's insurance, registration, cleaning, repairs. Industry estimates often suggest that maintaining a boat costs around 10% of its value every year. A $30 boat can quietly cost $3 per year just to keep it operational, even if you barely use it. But the second cost isn't only financial. It also includes mental energy. Every object in your home occupies a small portion of your attention. You need to organize it, clean it, store it, think about it. Research has shown that visual clutter can increase stress levels and reduce the brain's ability to focus. In other words, excess possessions don't just fill your home. They fill your mind. And finally, there is a cost that most people never think about. Opportunity cost. Every dollar locked inside possessions is a dollar that is not being invested. For example, if you spend $15 on a home gym setup, that money is no longer growing inside your investment portfolio. If that same $15 were invested and compounded over 15 years, it could potentially grow into $40 or $50. So you didn't just buy a home gym. You bought a home gym instead of a portion of your future financial freedom. Once you start adding these hidden costs together, something interesting happens. You realize that many possessions cost far more to own over time than they cost to buy. The purchase price is only the beginning. The real cost continues for as long as you keep the item. And once you begin seeing the world this way, your perspective changes. A purchase is no longer a single moment. It becomes a long-term ecosystem of costs that follows the item throughout its life. Once you start seeing possessions as long-term cost ecosystems, a natural question appears. If most objects carry hidden costs, how do you avoid falling into the endless cycle of buying and accumulating? People who maintain strong financial stability rarely rely on willpower. Instead, they follow clear rules when deciding what to own. These rules are simple, but when applied over years, their impact becomes enormous. Rule 1. Calculate cost per use. Before buying anything, ask yourself, how many times will I realistically use this? Then divide the purchase price by that number. That gives you the cost per use. A $200 jacket worn twice costs $100 per wear. Meanwhile, a $400 jacket worn 200 times costs only $2 per wear. The more expensive item is actually the smarter purchase. This calculation instantly eliminates many impulse buys. A $300 kitchen gadget used twice a year can easily become one of the most expensive items in your home. Meanwhile, a high-quality mattress used every night might be one of the best investments you make. Rule 2. The replacement test. The second rule applies to items you already own. Look around your home and ask a simple question. If this item disappeared today, would I buy it again? Be honest. Would you actually replace that bread maker collecting dust in the cabinet? Would you rebuy clothes you haven't worn in 2 years? Often the answer is no. Those objects remain in your life not because they add value. They remain because of inertia. You bought them once, and they simply never left. Rule 3. Never upgrade out of boredom. One of the easiest ways to lose money is upgrading things that still work. Your phone works perfectly, but the new version has a better camera. Your car runs reliably, but the new model looks nicer. Your television still functions, but the newer model promises sharper resolution. These upgrades rarely solve real problems. They solve boredom. But boredom is not failure. Financially disciplined people follow one rule. Replace something only when it no longer performs its function. Rule 4. Create friction for spending. Human behavior follows the path of least resistance. If buying things is easy, we buy more. So create friction. Delete shopping apps. Remove saved credit cards from websites. Apply a 24-hour waiting rule before buying non-essential items. At the same time, make saving easier. Automate transfers to your investment accounts immediately after payday. When the system is designed correctly, good decisions happen automatically. Rule 5. Count what you own. This rule sounds simple, but it's powerful. Choose a category: clothing, shoes, kitchen tools, and count. Many people believe they own 10 shirts until they count and discover they actually have 30. Counting creates awareness, and awareness reduces unconscious accumulation. Rule 6. Rent or borrow before buying. Many purchases happen during a burst of excitement. Camping gear, professional cameras, musical instruments. For a few weeks they are used frequently. Then the enthusiasm fades, and the object becomes part of a growing collection of rarely used things. Renting or borrowing first tests whether the interest is real. If the enthusiasm remains after repeated use, buying becomes a much smarter decision. Rule 7. The lifestyle multiplier effect. Some purchases never exist alone. A boat requires storage, insurance, maintenance, and equipment. A home gym requires flooring, mirrors, and dedicated space. A motorcycle requires gear and maintenance. Large purchases often create entire ecosystems of additional expenses. Understanding this allows you to see the full financial picture before making a decision. These rules are not about deprivation. They simply help you see the true cost of ownership. And once you see clearly, many purchasing decisions become much easier. At this point, you may begin to notice that the problem isn't only about spending. The rules we discussed earlier don't just help you buy fewer things. They lead to a much bigger question. What does enough actually look like? It's a question many people never truly answer. As income rises, they rarely stop to define what enough means. Instead, life expands quietly around their new income. A slightly larger home, a slightly nicer car, a slightly more expensive vacation. None of these decisions seem unreasonable. But something interesting happens over time. Every time income increases, the definition of normal life expands as well. And when that happens, the feeling of progress disappears. Someone earning $60 imagines that reaching $100 will make life easier. But once they reach $100, they begin comparing themselves to people earning $150. And the cycle continues. Income grows. Expectations grow. Pressure grows alongside them. This is why some people earning $300 a year still feel financially stressed. Not because they lack money, but because they never defined what enough looks like. People who achieve long-term financial stability often take the opposite approach. They define enough early. They decide, what kind of home is enough? What kind of car is enough? What level of spending truly creates comfort? Once that level is reached, additional income no longer feeds lifestyle expansion. It begins building freedom. This leads to a completely different way of measuring wealth. Most people measure wealth by what they own. A bigger house, a nicer car, more visible possessions. But people who understand money measure wealth differently. They measure it through optionality. The ability to choose. Can you leave a job that is draining your energy? Can you take several months off if your family needs you? Can you move to a new city to start a different chapter? Can you say no to opportunities that pay well but violate your values? Those are the real signals of wealth. Someone earning $200 but spending $190 has very little optionality. Someone earning $80 but living on $45 has a great deal. One person is chained to their income. The other has breathing room. And over the long run, that breathing room is what creates the sense of security most people are searching for. To understand why many people earning $100 a year still feel financially stressed, let's do a very simple calculation. First, remember that $100 is not what you actually take home. After income taxes, insurance, and other deductions, the number is significantly smaller. Let's assume the take-home income is around $70 per year. That works out to roughly $5.800 per month. Still sounds comfortable. But now look at the fixed costs. Housing or rent, around $2.200. Car payments, insurance, and fuel, about $800. Health insurance and related expenses, about $500. Groceries and everyday spending, around $800. At this point, we're already at roughly $4.300 per month. Then add the rest. Utilities, internet, subscriptions, a few meals out, an occasional trip. Very quickly, monthly expenses can reach $5. That leaves about $800 from the original $5.800. From that remaining amount, you still need to save money, invest for the future, prepare for unexpected expenses. One car repair, a medical bill, or an emergency trip can erase that margin instantly. And that's where the feeling of financial fragility begins. Not because the income is too small, but because the financial margin is too thin. Now compare this with someone earning $60 a year. After taxes, they might bring home around $3.800 to $4 per month. But their cost of living might only be $2.500 per month. That leaves roughly $1.500 per month for saving and investing. The first person earns more. But the second person has more financial margin. And it is that margin, not income, that creates the feeling of security. Once you understand that the real issue isn't income but financial margin, the next question becomes simple. How do you create that margin? The good news is that it rarely requires extreme changes. Most of the time, it comes from a few key shifts in how you structure your life. Shift 1. Reduce fixed costs before optimizing small spending. Many people spend enormous energy trying to cut small expenses. Less coffee, less entertainment, less random spending. But the expenses that truly shape financial margin are usually fixed costs. Housing, cars, long-term debt, monthly obligations. Reducing these even slightly can free up hundreds or even thousands of dollars each month. Shift 2. Define enough before income grows further. If you never define what enough looks like, lifestyle expansion happens automatically. That's how many people earn more every year yet never feel wealthier. Financially stable people take the opposite approach. They define the level of life that genuinely satisfies them. And when income increases, they don't immediately upgrade their lifestyle. They expand their financial breathing room. Shift 3. Build an emergency buffer. One of the biggest reasons people feel poor despite high income is the absence of a financial buffer. If income stops for a few months, everything suddenly becomes fragile. An emergency fund covering 6 to 12 months of expenses can completely change that feeling. Not because you expect to use it often, but because you know it's there. Shift 4. Measure wealth by choice. Finally, change how you measure wealth. Don't measure it by a bigger house, a nicer car, more possessions. Measure it by optionality. Can you say no to a job that drains you? Can you take time off if your family needs you? Can you change directions in life if you choose? Those are the real signals of financial stability. Let's return to the two apartments we started with. The first apartment, the person earning $100 a year. From the outside, their life appears more successful. But beneath the surface, everything is balanced on a system of expenses that must constantly be maintained. The income is high, but the financial margin is thin. One unexpected disruption is enough to create stress. Now look again at the second apartment, the person earning $55 to $65 a year. Their life is simpler. Fewer possessions, fewer upgrades, less pressure. But they possess something many high earners are still searching for. Breathing room. Enough space to know that if something unexpected happens, life will still be stable. This is where many people misunderstand money. They assume the feeling of wealth comes from earning more. But in reality, the feeling of security often comes from something else. Needing less to feel stable. When the gap between income and spending becomes large enough, money begins to do what it was always meant to do. It buys you choice. The choice to rest when needed. The choice to walk away from things that no longer fit. The choice to slow down. Not because you earn more than everyone else, but because your life doesn't require as much money to keep running. And sometimes, that quiet freedom is the form of wealth most people are actually searching for.